Imagine you're trying to share Jesus with a friend. You've got the right words, the right verses, and the right heart, but they look back at you with blank eyes as if you're describing a fairy tale. Why does the gospel feel unbelievable to so many people today?
Well, that's the tension, right? The news of Jesus is the best news in the world, but to our skeptical culture, it can feel implausible and even laughable. But today, we're unpacking principles that make the evangelistic gift sharper, and we're exploring how we can make the unbelievable news of Jesus to a skeptical world more believable.
And it's all right here, right now, and only on the Five Gifts podcast.
You're listening to the Five Gifts Podcast, a weekly show designed to equip leaders in the Spirit-filled church. I'm Bruce Ritter, and along with my co-host Charles Russell, we offer insights for leading the local church in the fullest expression of Jesus. If you're interested in learning more about practical theology, the gifts of the Spirit, and spiritual disciplines, this is the show for you. Welcome to the Five Gifts Podcast. Well, welcome to the Five Gifts Podcast. We're greeting you Labor Day week, and we're excited to be here. You may be catching us maybe later on a Tuesday afternoon on your drive Wednesday home from work. We're glad that you've joined us. Today, we're all about helping leaders grow in their gifts and learning what it might look like to become sharper, stronger, and more equipped in what God's called you to do. And today we're exploring the evangelistic gift, how it works in a skeptical culture. And we're asking, how can the church live in a way that makes the gospel both true and believable? Charles, happy Labor Day. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Bruce. Good to be here. Happy Labor Day to you and to all of our viewers and listeners, subscribers. Man, just hoping everyone has a phenomenal Labor Day today. So, with that being said, we kind of get into the episode. Bruce, have you ever had that moment where you're sharing Jesus and the other person looks at you like you're describing some far-fetched kind of fairy tale?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever engaged in personal evangelism on a consistent scale, everybody has kind of that story to tell. I was thinking about that, and when I was a teenager, just a few short years ago, not long ago at all. Uh, Tongue in cheek there, but when I was a teenager, we were having a revival at our church, and so my dad was the pastor, and he had received a call about a young man needing to do some community service, and so they worked those terms out, and Dad invited this young man to come to the revival that night. Well, he needed a ride, and so obviously he said, "Well, son, I need you to go pick this guy up, bring him to church." Absolutely, all right, Dad. So I go pick him up, and we're it's kind of awkward, and but you're small talking, you're chatting on the way to church. We had a phenomenal revival service that night. I mean, it was just great. Couldn't have gone any better. And the Spirit of the Lord was there. You just felt the presence of the Lord, kind of just really thick in the atmosphere. And if you're from a Spirit-filled background, you understand kind of the terms I'm talking about here. But it was just powerful. It was real, and the evangelist that night gave the altar call to come and receive Jesus, and I just knew this was the moment for this guy. I just had a sense that this was his moment in time, that he was to respond to Christ calling him back home. And so I looked at him and I said, "Hey, if are you ready to receive Christ? You've heard the presentation tonight. I just sense like the Lord is here, and he's drawing you." And I said, "Look, I'll are you ready to receive Christ tonight?" And he was like, just deadpan face, no emotion. He says, "No." And that threw me. I was like, what are you talking about? How could you sit in this environment? How could you be in this atmosphere and experience and feel the presence of God and not respond to that? And so I thought maybe he didn't understand me. I said, look, I know it can be a little awkward, maybe even intimidating. I said, I'll go with you to the front. Are you sure? Isn't tonight? This is the moment. This is your time. Are you ready to receive Christ as your Lord and Savior? And the same response, no. And I thought, are you an idiot? I didn't say that out loud, but I'm thinking, what's wrong with you, man? I asked him one more time, and it's still the same response, no. And so thoughts ran through my mind of, what do you want to ride home? If you do, you need to go accept Jesus, because you hadn't made it home yet, buddy. And so we go through this ordeal, and finally, I had to put the brakes on and just realize this guy wasn't having it. And it and I still, I mean, I'm an old, aged man here in 50 years old today, on this episode, and I still question that night. How in the world could that guy not have respond to the power of God that was at work, especially in that service? Um, and I think I think it's a question a lot of us as believers ask. How can people not believe? How can people be so skeptical? How can what we have embraced as truth and life be so unbelievable for so many others that we share this life with? But the good news about all that is this: Christianity is the most hopeful, it's the most life giving news ever. And so we can't stop sharing, we can't stop delivering the message. But a reality in the midst of that hope is oftentimes it's unbelievable to modern ears. And and so those are some tensions in this
Mhm.
evangelistic gift that at least that I've struggled with over the years. And so hopefully in today's episode, we can address some of those things.
Yeah, well, Charles, as always, you're right on the money with that observation. And the operative word here is believability, because the gospel is received by faith. It's received by an act of belief. But again, the observation about uh, a faith that you and I, not only do we believe it, we've kind of built our lives around teaching others about it. But we live in a skeptical culture, and they just find it unbelievable. And I think that's something for us to take back and to consider. Why is that? And so then how do we reframe our approach? One of the great missiologists of the last 50 years, Leslie Newbigin, was a professor at Stanford University, a Scottish by birth, and he made the same observation. I just want to share it with our listeners. He says, we have a pagan society whose public life is ruled by beliefs which are false. And because it's not a pre-Christian paganism, here's the key point. But a paganism born out of the rejection of Christianity is far tougher and more resistant to the gospel than the pre-Christian paganisms, which foreign missionaries have been in contact during the past 200 years. And here's what he says. Here, without possibility of question, is the most challenging missionary frontier of our time. Now, that's a brilliant insight, and it's true. There's so much truth there. Our mission is to connect people who are far from God and who have turned away from Christianity. So when we speak of the gift of the evangelist, or the evangelistic gifting that God gives to his church, just like he gives all the five gifts, evangelists recognize the landscape. People no longer share Christian assumptions. And so the evangelistic gift shines when it identifies some of those cultural barriers, names them honestly, and adapts. So the gifted evangelist knows how to translate Jesus into everyday language. That's innate in the gift of the evangelist.
Yeah, absolutely, Bruce. And I like what you're saying, that evangelists know how to translate life in the message into everyday language, and that comes through as evangelists. lean into what we would call testimony in faith storytelling. The truth is that as people, we live inside of narratives. Look around culture. The culture is filled with narrative, and the good news is that the gospel is God's true story. It's God's narrative. It's the truth of who He is. And so as we think about that, I think we could agree the gospel is best communicated as a story rather than as abstract propositions. People live by defining story, whether those personal, cultural, religious, and so evangelism involves showing how the gospel story, makes better sense of reality. Believers engaging in evangelism, we retell that story inside of our personal stories, and so it resonates with longings, with fears, and with hopes of our listeners. As evangelists also reframe. They're reframers. So instead of just defending, they restory questions inside the gospel narrative. Uh, so so the question of why suffering, it's not only a logic problem, but now it's a chance to point people to the cross where God suffers with us. That's a telling indicator of who an evangelist is and what evangelists do. Reframing, retelling that
Hmm.
question. So evangelists coach believers to redirect objections into opportunities for gospel storytelling. And so what that uh, would look like in just some practical evangelistic implementation maybe looks like this. We're training believers to shift from arguments to stories that connect. Um, one thing that I believe is and we've already stated it here. The gospel travels best across the bridge of relationship,
Hmm.
and then uh, the gospel is best communicated through a narrative, through story. And I believe that, and that's not just theory. That I've observed that, and I've lived that as I have shared the gospel. It has always been most effective in the form of a narrative or story. I'm telling you, I've never, not one time, ever argued anyone into the kingdom of God. I've never I've never argued and made my point and won the argument and said, now can I lead you to Jesus? That's never happened for me personally. But what has happened has been after sharing the story, after connecting stories and narratives, and personalizing the gospel message inside the stories and narratives of my life. Um, people have I've been God has used me to persuade and to influence people to Christ through story, and so I am convinced that this last kind of bit of evangelistic implementation we're talking about, I think we move people and help shift people in our training that look, we've got to move from arguments to stories that connect. Because when we connect people to the gospel narrative, Christ comes alive. There's an accessibility and availability uh, to the gospel, and then there's an openness in the individual's life that we're sharing with.
Yeah, Charles, that's a powerful point. I think, to kind of recap that for a minute, if you think of the process of sharing faith with someone, you could be rattling off the list of great apologetics that are sound and reasonable, but that person has a personal faith struggle. And when you can say, all right, this is not just what I believe, but let me tell you the story of how I came to process it personally. Well,
Yeah.
suddenly it gives them a connection to a personally experienced process of faith. So I think stories are wonderfully powerful for that, and it just reminds us that the gift of the evangelist is also a gift of contextualizing the gospel, bringing it into that personal story. And so, Charles, if evangelists are storytellers, we need to think, how do they take that story and begin to connect it to real life situations? I got a couple of thoughts about that. The first is, let's remember evangelists are bridge builders. They take values that people already prize, things they care about deeply, things like reconciliation, freedom, love, compassion, identity, and they show how Jesus fulfills them by framing them in Jesus's life and ministry. I mean, we have so many examples of his moving among the multitudes and connecting with people personally. And so we think of not just Jesus's life, but there's other biblical narratives of, again, people building bridges. I can't help but think of the Apostle Paul. He's on his own personal defense. He's on trial essentially at the end of the book of Acts, but he goes in to share his story of how he came to faith in Jesus. And what was the king's response or the governor's response? You almost persuade me to become a believer. That's a really important point. It's not just a matter of telling facts and rattling off ideas, but it's about connecting, building a bridge to people that could be having similar struggles of faith themselves. And when we are able to bring those examples and help people feel the flesh and the skin, of someone else that's dealing with those too, it's a powerful bridge of connection. Remember, the evangelistic gift discerns entry points where gospel truth overlaps with cultural desires. So that's one of the great things about the gospel. And one of the things that always stands out to me is how the Apostle Paul always talked to, let's say, slaves and owners. He didn't talk to them about let's correct this social injustice. He said, let's be Christ. Let's live like Christ. And somehow that was transformative. It transformed relationship on a personal level, like say Philemon and Onesimus, but it also began to shape the values of how we value the image of God in people. And so while Paul never penned any word that took aim at slavery, in the Roman Empire, it was the values espoused in the New Testament that began to pull down that structure, and it's confronted that structure that injustice in every society. So the gospel has that power, but it has that capacity to bridge both on the personal level, but also, those higher ideals of the people have when it comes to their values. Another thing that I think needs to happen is not just the evangelistic gift discern those entry points, but Charles, tell us a little bit about how the gospel is elevated by hospitality.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the ways we build this bridge that you've been talking about is evangelism through hospitality. Evangelists thrive in creating spaces where skeptics feel welcomed and loved. Isn't that a novel thought that we would actually spend time and be intentional about creating spaces instead of just kind of hammering people? Eventually they'll get it if we hit them long enough and hard enough with it. They'll receive it. But evangelists really thrive in creating spaces where skeptics can feel welcomed and loved, a place to feel accepted, a place to feel welcomed, a place to feel like this is where I belong, or these are a group of people that I can belong to. So that's a huge part of what evangelists do. Um, what does that look like? Some of those environments might be over a meal, and that could be over a series of meals. Maybe it's a monthly meal or a weekly meal. I mean, however that comes together. But meals are wonderful places, are wonderful spaces for people to feel welcomed and loved. Friendships, relation building opportunities. Um, Connecting people into some type of community gathering. All these things become evangelistic environments. And another thing is that evangelists remind us evangelism is not only proclamation, but it's also invitation into community. I want to say that again. I think that's really important. Evangelism is not only proclamation, but it is also invitation into community. It spends time building on ramps in the Christ body. And so, we paint the picture and we tell the narrative of this wonderful life that Christ provides, but how do people access that life? How do people access this transformation? How do people access this Christ who we are beautifully describing to our to the lost sons and daughters of God? How do we help them return home? And evangelism is doing that through inviting people into community and then spending time building on ramps to access this life of Christ, to onboard into the life Christ is calling us to. So Bruce, here's the challenge. Even with hospitality, many people still think Christianity is unbelievable. So how does the evangelistic gift address that?
Well, evangelists understand something that a guy by the name of Sam Chan talks about a lot. In fact, we're using one of his textbooks in our upcoming cohort, one of our evangelism classes, and he spends a lot of time talking about. And I want you to get this terminology in your vocabulary: plausibility structures. Now, what he means is that he's talking about how a person's frameworks reinforce what they believe. Plausibility structures determine believability, not truth. We're not talking about necessarily a defined objective truths, but believability around some things, some concepts, some ideas. For example, maybe you've had experience with a person who believes the earth is flat. Well, if you take that person isolated and you have a conversation with them, some of their ideas, especially if you're not familiar with it, it's strange, it's odd, it seems a little out of step and almost a novelty. But when you realize there's a whole flat earth society, and so when a person who believes in a flat earth gets around other people that believe in that the earth is flat, and they talk about it and they raise their evidence, well, what you're witnessing is their plausibility structure. You're witnessing something not only that they believe, but it's reinforced in a community of other people that have maybe written articles or they've done a YouTube video or something on it. And so, when we think of why people believe what they believe, it's not just because the truth is objective and definable and clearly articulated and well argued. It's usually because there is a concept in there that brought them into that belief, and it was supported by a group of other people who are like-minded in that belief. So when it comes to evangelism, the way we begin to reach people is we have to realize that what people believe is supported by a group of people that helps them assimilate it, helps them practice it, observe it. So again, implementation is about creating communities of credibility where the gospel feels believable. Now, I'm not saying that feeling replaces objective truth, but feeling is a big supportive, nurturing environment for people to embrace the gospel. So, for example, evangelists model a lifestyle, and they train the church to embody a culture of generosity, integrity, joy, compassion, care for the hurting, any that kind of environment that helps people experience what we say the gospel values. And so again, let me give you a couple of examples. You can have a claim that's objectively true, and I'm a big believer in apologetics. I believe that's a key tool in an evangelist tool belt. That's something they definitely need. But if it doesn't fit someone's plausibility structure, it feels unbelievable. I go back to the story, Charles, you shared about a person that was not ready to respond to an invitation. 90% of the people in that room thought it was a perfect night to trust Christ and believe on the gospel. But here you have a guy that is not there. the plausibility for him is not strong enough in his experience, and so it probably takes him a little more time of belonging, of getting to know the people that are in that structure. Again, the people that believes that point to the evidence of UAPs or UFOs versus people that believe in the story of the gospel. Both are extraordinary, right? But that belief is green lighted by experience. It's green lighted within a people that believe the same. So remember, as in evangelism, community is the strongest influence. This is something that John Wesley used in his discipleship societies, where he brought new believers into the community of other believers, and they got a chance to explore faith, but not just on an intellectual level. They got to experience that in community. Belief is shaped less by raw evidence and more by trusted friends and family and communities and what they affirm. So their thinking is, if my people or my friends or my tribe believe this, then I'm more likely to believe this. Again, I feel like I'm taking way too much time here, but again, experience reinforces plausibility. Things like personal encounters, answered prayers. Anytime a person gets to observe the transformative power of the gospel, well, that confirms the gospel's credibility. And experience often outweighs abstract arguments. Things like, why do we believe the earth was created in 6 days, or the creation was created in 6 days? Well, it's harder to prove that than it is to say, in a group of people, we believe Jesus forgives sinners and transforms lives. The community is a much more accessible, touchable, experienced plausibility. I'll give you a couple of examples. If you've ever been a youth pastor, you understand this. You may have some teenagers in a small youth group, and you've taught them, and they're wondering, why do they have to be the weird kid at school that goes to church, and their parents, had them at church every time it was open. And so you got a small youth group, and who are hearing things about let's support missions, and let's have a car wash, and go to youth conference, and let's share our faith. And they're thinking, why? That feels weird. But then if you take them to a youth convention with tremendous worship on the platform, and dynamic speakers, and incredibly moving altar calls, what it's like to bring those students away from that thinking, wow, there are more people that believe like we believe, and it's powerful. We love it. So again, that's an example. Another example right out of Scripture is that Paul in 1 Corinthians 15, what does he stress so much about the resurrection? Not just the event itself, but he begins to recount all of the people that encountered Jesus after the resurrection. He talks about Paul. He talks about James. He mentions up to 500 other people, and he says, and I'm one of them, right? The resurrection is true regardless, but citing the witnesses raises the plausibility, right? Other people in my group of faith, they saw this too. That's a powerful concept, and I think it's worth time thinking about and examining your own harvest field. What are their plausibility structures? And if you want to know the answer to that, look at the groups that they're a part of. What do their groups believe? Not just what do they believe, but what are their circle of friends? What did they believe? So I think that's such a powerful idea. But Charles, we got some other parts to talk about with the evangelistic gift. So how does the evangelistic gift bring it down to earth into real personal encounters?
Well, I believe there's a few points that we need to consider that does exactly that. That makes evangelism real. That brings it into a personal encounter. Number one would be this: the idea that teamwork is exactly that. It's evangelism is teamwork. It's a team effort. And so the evangelistic gift thrives when working with apostolic vision, with prophetic boldness, with pastoral care, and with teaching clarity. So what we're saying is that evangelism is not some is not just some force that's working on its own in a vacuum. No, evangelism is a team effort, and it must be connected into or with the other four gifts of Christ, the other four ascension gifts of Christ. It's a team effort, all the gifts working together and kind of running in their own lane, but all running in the same direction, toward the same destination, if you will. And so, as a team, these gifts work together. Uh, I think we try to silo out the gifts sometimes, but they all work better in team. And so, the evangelistic gift it thrives when working in team with all the other gifts. Evangelists don't work alone. They catalyze the whole body. Again, this idea of kind of solo or siloing out the gifts. Sometimes evangelists can get the rap of kind of being a little eccentric or kind of a lone wolf mentality, and evangelists aren't gifted to work alone. They're gifted to catalyze the whole body. Especially this evangelistic gift that we're talking about, it was given to equip the church, and so if we're going to function in the evangelistic gift, we can't think of that as, all right, this is what I'm doing myself individually, but how is this gift working through me in order to equip the body in evangelism? So evangelists catalyze the whole body. Another point to consider is this: evidence matters, but it is filtered through community. Evidence matters, but it's filtered through community. Look, we dismiss or reinterpret evidence if it doesn't align with what our community already believes. Another thing to consider as we kind of work down our list here: evangelism requires merging communities. And so this is what I mean. If Christians and non-Christians remain in separate relational universes, the gospel feels less believable. And so there is a merging of these two communities. There is a merging of these of two different. This is a terrible way to say it, I guess, but two different types of people, two different belief systems, where we have to be in relationship. And I know that really kind of goes against the grain of what a lot of people teach and propose. But if we're not connected with people, how are we going to bridge the gap of evangelism to unbelievers? And so, evangelism requires merging these communities together. Um, when Christian and non-Christian friends mix, plausibility rises. Now all of a sudden, faith feels normal and not kind of on the fringe. And so again, when we merge these communities through evangelism, what's happening? We're bridging the gaps. We're through relationship and through the gospel narrative. Now faith feels more normal. It feels more accessible. It feels more within reach to those who are trying to find their way back home as prodigal sons and daughters. Another point to really kind of make evangelism uh, thrive in personal encounters: overlap your social circles. If you keep Christian and non-Christian friends in separate bubbles, your faith kind of seems like a private quirk. But again, if we bring them together, say at a cookout and a movie night, a dinner, the non-Christians realize, hey, look, half the people here believe in Jesus, and so the story becomes more credible. So again, overlapping our social circles. And again, evangelists are cross cultural interpreters, and so even in the same city, people live in different many worlds, and so evangelists are able to kind of really do cross cultural missions and cross cultural work through the evangelistic gift. This same gift, it translates the gospel into each setting, just like missionaries do overseas. And so I think maybe that's a good pattern to think of ourselves, even here in the great United States. Uh, we're doing cross cultural ministry, much like a missionary, through this evangelistic gift. And so, just some points of implementation would simply be that evangelists model a team approach to evangelism and engage unbelievers in team environments. And the second, evangelists model cultural humility and train others to listen and learn before speaking. Man, if I could get that one down, uh, if I could listen and learn before I open my big mouth and speak, maybe I might be a better evangelist. So, Bruce, if evangelism is not solo work, it's communal, it's cultural, it's contextual. At the heart of it, how does the evangelistic gift help us actually tell the story of Jesus in a personal way?
Well, Charles, I can think of two. Number one, it requires your story, and it takes a real patient approach. Do you want me to share both of these?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So when it comes to your story, remember, and we talked about this earlier, evangelists equip others to tell their story inside of God's story. Remember, testimonies aren't random. They fit into the gospel arc of creation, the fall, redemption, and restoration. Every believer has that same pattern in their testimony. They sinned, they fell from God, they were disconnected, they learned of God's redemption, and they acted in faith, and they were restored. So again, testimonies follow the arc of the gospel, and I think it's important that evangelists, one of their great equipping values for the body of Christ is we equip people to relate the gospel to other people. We need to, pastors, be mindful of this. Is that the people of your church sit in the very pathways that you want to open up to bring people into your church. So equip them to tell their story, equip them to share their faith, equip them to pray for those to come open. But that story is vital. And so give opportunity for people to learn how to share their testimony in 100 words or 300 words or a 3-minute testimony, a 1-minute elevator speech, any form of them shaping their story in a presentable way is a win. And so evangelists, again, use that gift in the body to train believers to share, practice, and make sure they have their testimony down concisely but also relatably. And I would say maybe at the last point is that evangelists embody patience. I mean, they know conversion is a process. It's not just a moment. It takes time. And Paul talks about this in 1 Corinthians. There are some that plant and there are some that water, but God gives the increase. And so all along the way, we need to help people see their value in the process, to be seed planters and seed waterers. That's got to be something that people carry in the heart of their call and their mission. And we need to encourage that in our people. Remember to encourage persistence in friendship, persistence in prayer, persistence in witnessing, persistence in trusting the Spirit's timing. Just keep doing the work and keep partnering with the Lord in the process. Remember, evangelists have to remind churches to sow faithfully. Be patient with it. Don't just look to close the deal all the time. Allow the work of the Spirit in the hearts of people. And Charles, I think sowing is such a beautiful picture for the church to reclaim in evangelism. So to recap for today, remember, the evangelistic gift is not just bold proclamation. It's a contextual translation of your story, of the narrative of the gospel that's lived out over and over and over again in people who have learned and been redeemed by faith. So remember, contextualize it, tell the story, show hospitality, work with your team, reframe, and show a patience in loving people. And if today's conversation stirs something in you, don't let it stop here. Talk about it with your small group, your ministry team, even your mentor or coach. Please share this episode with someone like your leadership team. Share it with other members of your church or other members of your friend group. Like it and share it, please.
Absolutely. And if I could add my 2 cents into what Bruce is saying, subscribe to our podcast. We don't want you to miss any future episodes. So go ahead, take a moment right now, hit the subscribe button, like, follow, all that good stuff. We're endeavoring to build a community of leaders who believe formation and mission belong together. And we want you to be on the journey with us. Also, maybe you're ready for coaching, whether you lead a church, a nonprofit, or a kingdom business. We offer customized coaching solutions for individuals and teams, one-on-one coaching that clarifies your personal call and strengthen your systems, team strategy sessions to align your leaders, your priorities, and your growth rhythms. You can schedule your free discovery call right now at charlesrusselltraining.com or charlesrussellministries.com. Go to coachingcardia.com. You can get in contact with Bruce via that website. Remember, listen, when we live as a spirit-filled community, we make the unbelievable believable. That's our calling. And so we'll see you next week right here on the Five Gifts Podcast.
Are you a spirit-filled minister ready to take the next step in your ministry training? The Servant Leaders Cohort will help you earn your BA, MA, or DMin. We offer in-person instruction in a small group learning environment that is affordably priced. Instruction happens in monthly 2-day intensives in the Triad of North Carolina. Degrees are approved and conferred by Vision Christian Bible College and Seminary. You can earn your bachelor's in 2 years, a master's in 15 months, or a DMin in 18 to 24 months. For more information, go to fivegifts.org/SLC.
You've been listening to the Five Gifts Podcast. If you would like to take the next step as a spiritual leader, we invite you to visit either of our websites or contact us for leadership coaching. We can help you reach the next level in your own growth and leadership. We provide leadership, spiritual gift, and personality assessments that give you a better grasp of your leadership style. And we also create a customized growth plan that empowers you to reach your full kingdom potential. We can't wait to hear from you.